Hey everybody, welcome to Unscripted, where we're all about inspiring better conversations and helping people think more deeply and critically about faith, life, and leadership. My name is Sam, and I'm really excited today because here across from me, sitting across from me, is Shawn Oakes, who has become a friend and spent some time chatting for a number of times now. We've had some emails back and forth, and a while back, we sat down and had coffee, and during the middle of the conversation over coffee, I think I leaned over and I asked you, like, hey, we need to have this conversation a second time, but we need to record it. And you said yes. So thank you. Welcome to Unscripted, Shawn.
Thanks, Sam.
It's so great to have you on here.
Yeah, it's cool being here.
How you feeling? Yeah.
It's good. It's feel good.
Awesome. So we got some really fun stuff to talk about. I want to get into it because I think what people will get out of today is just a little bit of freedom for how they can live their life. Just because I think there's something that in what we're going to talk about that's there. But before we get to that, I first want to talk about it's judo, right?
It's actually Krav Maga.
Krav Maga. Okay, great. Tell me about this for a minute, and I'll tell you why we get to that in a little bit.
So Krav Maga is it's an Israeli defense system.
Yes, I'm remembering this now.
Yeah, it's a self-defense system developed by this guy named Emi, and he developed it actually in like around the World War II era.
Sure.
To fight Nazis on the street. He's a Jewish guy. He's an Israeli guy, and so he developed this system that uses all kinds of MMA techniques. Karate, judo, wrestling, boxing, and so. So it's a system. It's a martial art, but it's not a sport martial art.
Okay. What I love about this, when we were talking about this before, we got into talking about it, and we connected a bit over both of our history of wrestling. So we both were wrestlers growing up, and there's something about it that's really fun. And so I was like intrigued, like, how did you get back into this? And it was fun to think about that.
Yeah. So it was a thing where I knew kind of like I wanted to get back into something. It was like I needed something for fitness wise, but I wasn't sure what it was, and I'm not like you. Like, I'm not a runner. Like, I can't do that stuff. So it was just funny. I was just on Facebook and I saw this this trial offer for a place here in Oshkosh, and it was a 6-week, and I thought, what the heck? I'll just I'll give it a shot.
Yeah.
And when I went into it, I just said, I'm just going to give myself permission to suck at this until I don't suck at it anymore.
I love that phrase you just said. That's so good.
And I kind of did, right?
Totally. But so it's fun because for me, going back and looking back, there's no better workout than wrestling. Mm-hmm. And is this still the case for what you're doing?
Oh, absolutely.
Oh, that's so great.
It's just a crazy workout. It's there's no way I could push myself the way I push myself in this. And I've lost like 14 pounds in the last year.
Yeah, and you probably put on a little muscle too, right?
Yeah, a little bit.
Oh, it's crazy.
Yeah.
It's awesome because when you're going one-on-one with somebody, you use every part of your body, and like you don't even realize you're using muscles. You don't even realize what's happening, but you're just like so into this moment. It's so intense.
Right.
It's so wild to do that.
Yeah, it's so like I've done Krav Maga, and it's kind of like the techniques for that, and we practice techniques. But I've also like recently gotten into the kickboxing side of things as well. So we spar a couple nights a week. And then that's back into that kind of that wrestling, that force against force, and just that feeling again, that feeling of competition, but it's not like heavy, like I want to hurt somebody, but it's still that kind of that competition that you felt in wrestling.
Yeah. How sore are you the next day?
Like when I first started, I was sore all the time. But now when I get sore, it's just like it's not like a serious sore, but it's more like small injuries.
Yeah.
And so I'm like always injured. Like I can I can like picture what it's like to be like in the NFL or something, where you're always got some little ding or whatever.
Yeah, there's always something messed up with you.
Yeah.
I can understand that. Now I just have like my 3 boys that like irk me some way, and then I'm sore in one spot because of that.
Right.
But I totally agree. I remember in wrestling, like that was the thing. Like you'd always be kind of nursing some kind of injury. Yeah. Always trying to come back from it.
Yeah, my wife is just like, I don't want to hear it. Like, I'll walk in, I don't want to hear it. I don't want to see it today.
Yep.
Yeah.
Yep. You're not sore. You're not bad. You got to own that for yourself. You made that choice.
Yeah, for sure. Yeah.
That's so great.
Yeah.
So the reason I bring that up is, as we were talking a little bit ago, you said like you were willing to try something new, and try something, and you just said it, be willing to suck at it until you got good at it. And really talking about being willing to fail is a big part of it. So I want to back up a lot now.
Okay.
If you're up for that.
Yep.
You went from, you're at the place now where you're willing to do something kind of crazy like that and just like jump into it. But in the past, like you've had some life that you've lived. Would you be up for telling a bit of that story?
Yeah, for sure.
And you can start wherever you want.
Yeah. So I'm a recovering alcoholic. I'm in long-term recovery, by the grace of God and the fellowship of AA. My last drink was 2.5 years ago.
That's amazing.
And in that 2.5 year period has been the most beautiful, amazing time of my life, completely. But before that, the 3 to 5 years before that was, it was a complete hell. I had, I guess going back, when I look at it, I started drinking early. I started drinking very young. And, so, I mean, there's some factors involved in that, right? Like you're so many times more likely the earlier you start drinking to develop problems later in life. And then I'm sure there's some genetics to it as well. But there's also just kind of that slippery slope that is alcoholism, and it's progressive. So, through my life, I've always felt like I was kind of like functional. But it's always been a big part of my life, almost idolized. When I look back, it was always such a big part of my life. And really what it did, I mean, it did so many things for me, right? Like, the joy and conviviality and the social aspects of it. It felt like it gave me more courage and took away anxiety. Later I was to find that it was actually had a big factor in creating anxiety and depression. And so like there was a certain point, and I don't know when that was, when it stopped doing things for me and started doing things to me.
I'm gonna just ask you one question, because I'm curious. I know a lot of people deal with anxiety. Like it's a very difficult, sometimes debilitating thing. And was that your case? Like, is that your just cure for it early on was to take another drink?
Yeah, for so many of us, it's like self-medication, right? Like we feel this anxiety. There's just like, for me, I didn't want to feel a lot of the things in life, right? I didn't want to feel sadness, and I didn't want to feel the fear, and I had these self-doubts. But when I drank, I didn't. Those seemed to go away. But like I said, that was the case for most of my life. But there was a certain point where that didn't work anymore. Where it wouldn't take the anxiety away. It wouldn't give me the courage, and wouldn't take the self-doubt or the fear, and it was actually creating more doubt and fear, and because it was causing more trouble in my life,
What happened?
So I think, and that's the hard part, is I try to figure out when that time started. But for me, it was the lead into what I kind of call the reckoning, and the reckoning for me was a series of consequences that were undeniable. Like, for everybody looking in, it was obvious that alcohol was causing some sort of a problem, even though even though in my mind I still had denial on it, right? But
Yeah.
and those consequences, those first consequences, were all in 1 week. I was arrested twice. I had a DUI. I had the SWAT team at my house. So I was put on. I was suicidal, right? I was suicidal leading up to that, just because I didn't understand what was going on with me. I clearly couldn't control my drinking, but I didn't know why. I didn't know if it was a willpower thing, if it was weakness, if it was a moral defect. I was later to find that it's a disease. So before that, I was getting to this suicidal point, and it really kind of led up to this whole incident. And really that was the start.
Yeah.
But it wasn't that moment where I said, I need help. It was that moment where I said, I got to get control of this. Like I need to depend on myself and be stronger and get control of this.
Tell me more about that. So like you have a couple things going on all at once. You have this moment, who knows when it was, when it stopped helping and started hurting. And that propels you towards a point where you're suicidal, where you're in a bad spot. And as you think about that, and then the switch to control, when all the things kind of hit the wall, tell me more about how that happened in your head.
Yeah. So when I came out of, I had spent like 4 days in a psych ward. I had spent 30 hours in the Fond du Lac County jail dorm. So when I came out of that, I had this resolve that I was just going to be stronger, and I was going to use my willpower, and I was going to stop drinking. Yeah. Which lasted not very long. I want to say like a couple of months. And the funny thing is when you get sober after going through some of this stuff, you feel so good after a couple of months. Yeah. And then your mind starts to tell you that you can start to control it, and you can start getting back into your old habits again. Yeah. And, I spent that first year after that. Thankfully, I didn't have a felony. I ended up with a misdemeanor, but I still was on probation for it. So I had a probation officer that was keeping an eye on me. I had a court-appointed drug and alcohol counselor that I had to see. And then I also had an interlock on my car. And so these things kind of kept me in check. Yeah. But it didn't stop my addictive mind from trying to game the system. So I was drinking around those things. I was figuring out how many hours it took to be able to be well enough to get in my car and still blow enough to get in under the interlock. I knew that I could drink on the weekend and still make it. Yeah. Do a drug and alcohol test on Thursday if I set up my meetings with my counselor and my probation officer. Yeah. On Thursday, I knew that I would have a clean test on Thursday. So all those things were telling me that I had it under control again. Right.
You talk about willpower and how that failed you, and then all that was keeping you in check were just these regulations.
Yeah, absolutely. Right.
Man, that's wow. So what happens there? Like, so if you're following that to its end, and what happens with that end?
So we get to the end of that year. Yeah. And all of this had somehow, my insane mind said, look at how you controlled that whole situation. You should be able to control it now. But the wheels fell off, and it just got worse. I mean, I can't tell you how many times I got suicidal after that. And my drinking just escalated more and more, just because of the progressive nature of alcoholism. And, then drinking on the weekends turned to drinking during the week. Drinking at night turned to drinking all day or from the morning on, and drinking at times when I shouldn't have been drinking, clearly. And then I felt like everything slipping away. Like I still had the job that I had. I still had my home and my family yet, but everything felt like it was slipping away.
Yeah. So really quickly, I just want to ask about that. You were high performing.
Mm-hmm.
So that was like a mask you wore.
It was a total mask.
How did you like think about that during that time?
And it made it worse, right?
Yeah.
Because that just added to the pressure of things. Because the expectations were so high. And so I just knew I wasn't going to meet those expectations. They almost seemed impossible, but I had to do it every day. So I had to wake up every day and fight my addiction and still try to meet the expectations of life that was setting in front of me. And it was that hell. It was a miserable place to be. It was a dark place that you just want to get out of. You just want the day to be over with.
Yeah. Man. So as that's happening, you come to another point.
Yes. There was maybe another reckoning, but I don't even know if it was that. I got to the point where my health started to decline.
Yeah.
Even though I would look in the mirror and I would be in complete denial. That was, what was happening to me. And there was a point where I turned an orange color. My eyes were completely yellow. I had bloated up. I was bloated up to about, I'm 170 now. I was at like 190, 192. And it was all like fluid building up in me. And I was thoroughly convinced that I just had a digestive problem and was just backed up and needed to see a doctor to get that fixed, right? And that, that was at a point where I was drinking just to stay alive, to not have the shakes during the day. I needed to have drinks throughout the day just to get me through the day. And so I went in to urgent care, and I just said, "Hey, is there something that you can give me to clean my system out?" And they took some blood work, and they said, "Yeah, you're not going anywhere." So they admitted me to the ICU right away based on my blood. Like a normal bilirubin is supposed to be below 1.
Sure.
And mine was at a 33. And so my abdomen was so distended, they needed to catheterize it. So they put a catheter within your abdominal cavity and then drain the fluid off from me. And so they did the first one here in Ripon. And it was looking dire. So they were asking me about do not resuscitate orders. They were giving me things to make me feel comfortable. But it wasn't looking good. It was looking like my systems were shutting down. So I did end up transferring to UW-Madison Hospital, and it's crazy there. Like they put a whole teams of doctors on you.
Yeah.
It's an amazing place. And I was in the ICU there as well, but it was still, they weren't sure that I was going to make it.
What's going through your head during this time?
Well, because
you start getting those do not resuscitate conversations. That gets serious.
Yeah. I mean, the thing is that I remember little snippets because I was really, really sick at the time. I had no idea I was that sick, and I was going through detox even, through this. So I was hallucinating and I was in and out. What I put my family through during that time is just unimaginable, right?
Yeah.
That was a terrible situation for them. But I did respond. I started responding to the prednisone. I did get drained 2 more times while I was there, and they drained 2.5 gallons off my abdomen.
Wild.
Right?
Yeah.
And so when I left, my bilirubin was still at 21. They weren't even sure that they were going to let me go home. And still, there's that you can tell there's that doubt in the doctor's minds. I don't know if this guy's going to make it. But I responded to things pretty well. And I came home from that point, and I spent a month home from work. just having a terrible diet. Like it was the blandest, most terrible diet you can ever imagine. And I was able to go back to work in a month, and then I stayed sober for another 5 months, right? Like, so you would have thought that was the bottom.
Yeah, I was going to say, so even then,
right?
like you're still like in your head thinking you can control it.
Yep. But coming out, I was fully convinced that I was never going to drink again. Yeah. And I was just going to do it all by myself. I was going to do it based on willpower alone. I felt like I needed help morally, right? So that's the time where I first started coming to RCC, right? That was that first moment where I started coming here. And actually, that was after the reckoning was when I first started coming here. And so that was kind of my first introduction. I wasn't like, I hadn't done a lot of church or religion growing up, but I knew I needed something, but I didn't know how to do it.
Yeah.
Right. I didn't know how to do it.
Well, it's really interesting. You made a specific comment. You said I needed help morally, which is, I think, what a lot of people think church is, but it's not necessarily that in the way that people imagine it to be.
Right.
So I was just curious. So you come to church, you start to say, I'm going to do this with my own willpower. And then what happens?
Yeah. So I make it 5 months.
Yeah.
And that insanity of the addiction still says, well, you're better now, right? Like you've gotten better morally, you've got more willpower, you've got more control. Look at your health is back, and so there were those things that I had built my life around, that I still connected with alcohol. And one of those was vacation. Yeah. And so that was my first relapse, is going into my vacation at our lake place. I relapsed, and it happened slowly. It was one beer, nothing to drink rest of the day, which thoroughly convinced me that I had control over my disease again. Yep. Right. So I did the same thing. And then progressively the next day I would do 2. And then the next day I'm drinking a 6-pack, and then I'm back into it all over again. And, when I would do those things, I would go on these sprees and I would just disappear from work. I would be gone for long periods of time without anyone knowing, where I went or what happened to me. And I would end up maybe in the psych ward. I've done that a couple of times. I had done that a couple of times. That I didn't on that particular relapse. But I came out of that one on my own. Yeah. And said, I've got to do something different. And that's the thing with each relapse. I did something different, that's kind of what saved me. Because if I had said, I just need to try harder, I don't know that I would have made it.
That's so interesting, because we're talking about specifically alcoholism, but there are so many other areas of people's lives that drive them into the ground, and they just say, I'm going to try harder. Nah, I'm going to try something different. And that's so important. Keep going. I'm going to stop you, but it's just really a big deal.
No, it totally is. And, so I came out of that relapse, and I decided that I would do another program. Like I did Celebrate Recovery, which I would never bash that program. And it's a Christian-based kind of recovery program. Yeah. And it's just a little lighter than AA, and it was only 1 day a week. And so I wasn't working the steps the way I was it ended up that I needed to. Yeah. And I had still thought, well, if I do that, I'm just going to be working on my moral. I need to work on my moral character, because I'm not a good person. All I need to do is figure out how to be a better person. Yeah. And then I'm going to lick this thing, right? And so that lasted maybe another month and a half, 2 months. And then a funny thing happened is I went to my doctor for a checkup, and my bilirubin was normal, and all of my other blood work was normal. And I came out and I celebrated that next day of my blood work and my health exam being good. by drinking.
Yeah.
You know, that's the insanity of it. Is,
you celebrate with the thing that like you know is going to do what isn't good for you.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and that time, that relapse, I ended up in the psych ward again. I ended up in detox, and I was suicidal again. You know, crazy suicidal, like really the dark kind of place that I was in. But still here I'm convincing myself that, you know, that's why I'm drinking, is because I'm depressed and anxious. So that's my purpose for drinking.
Yeah.
When eventually I was to find out that my anxiety and depression was coming from the drinking, from the alcoholism itself. So when I came out of that stay at the psychiatric ward, then I was determined that I was going to do AA, and I was going to do it right. Like I was going to do it full on. It was something I had gone to a couple of meetings and I didn't really know that I believed in at the time. But it was again, I had a relapse. Whatever I was doing didn't work. I need to change something. I need to do something different. I need to do something more.
So the last psych ward that you went to, did you check yourself into that one?
I did check myself into that one.
Okay, I remember talking about that and being like, that was a shift for you.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Okay. And so out of that was a good time when you were there.
Yeah, it was good. Yeah, it was definitely good. And I came out, and they tell us to do 90 meetings in 90 days, right?
Yeah.
So I was fully committed to that. I ended up doing 39 meetings in 39 days. And I don't know if you can guess what happened on the 40th day. So when I went in and I did the program, and I went into it like a class, right? Like it was a college class, and I was going to graduate from the program. I was going to do it, you know, better than anyone. I was going to study it. I was going to know the book inside and out.
Yeah.
And I didn't really take in the spiritual aspects of it. It was still like, how can I think my way through this whole thing?
Man.
And I got to a point where I was so confident in my sobriety now that I ended up there was a wine walk here in town, and I told my wife and daughter, like, if you're gonna go on the wine walk, I'm the sober guy. I can pick you up, and you know, so that you don't drive or whatever. And when I went to pick them up, instead of calling them and just waiting out in the street, I decided I would walk in and let them know that I was going to be there. So I walked into a crowded bar with, you know, we're in Ripon, so you know everybody. So I spent a half hour, 45 minutes talking to people in there, and I came out and I hadn't drank while I was in there, which totally convinced me.
Again.
Right? Again. That look at how strong my recovery is.
Yeah.
How in control I am. And I relapsed the next day. And that's the one that was the one that really scared me, that said, you're really dealing with like a crazy mind here. You're not going to be able to fix your crazy mind with your crazy mind, kind of a thing, you know.
That's
you're
a great phrase. You can't fix your crazy mind with your crazy mind, and all of us have crazy minds. But yeah.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. So that was the point where I was like, I didn't have a clue what I was going to do. And someone in the AA program had stopped over and asked me if, I would consider doing rehab, which I was like, are you kidding me? I can't do it.
Yeah.
A month away from work, and then I've got to tell work what's actually going on with me, even though they know something's going on with me.
Yeah.
Because of this behavior that I have. And so like I finally was convinced that I needed to go away for a while, and figure this thing out and get some help. And I didn't know what that help was going to be yet.
Yeah.
So I let my work know. And the funny thing is they were like, we're so glad you're finally getting help for this, right?
That's
where
amazing.
I thought they were going to fire me.
Yeah. Right.
Wow. Yeah. So they were really supportive.
So the biggest fear you had for that in that specific area was met with the biggest probably relief.
Right.
That's amazing. And
Right.
good for your work. Way to go.
Yep. So what that afforded me to is just to check out of life for a while. I needed to check out for that 28 days and just work on me and my problem. And I tell you, I hated it. I went in and I hated it. For the first 2 weeks,
Yeah.
I thought it was just a huge mistake, that I didn't know what this was going to do for me. I didn't understand what the counselors were trying to tell me, and I was still in my head. I was still going to try to think my way through this.
Did you have all the right answers?
I was pretty sure I had all the right answers. Yeah. And something happened. The counselors there just really worked on me, and just, they were working on, like, you're so in your head, you got to get out of your head and you got to get into your heart, and they wanted me to feel things, which I didn't want to feel anything, and that's what I've been avoiding with alcohol the whole time, is feeling anything. So I spent one night, it was the 15th day that I was there, and it was completely sleepless, and I was so frustrated with what they were trying to tell me, and I was so frustrated in that the answer wasn't coming to me on what I was going to do to solve this problem. So it was about 4:30 in the morning. I was just like, I was so frustrated, and I was just like, I don't get it. And I was saying this out loud. I don't know if my bunkmate was listening to me at all or not, but I was like, I don't get this. I just really give up. I give up. I give up. And I'm going to try not to get choked up at this one. It was at that moment, that moment was complete surrender. And I felt the hand of God. Like, there are things in the big book of AA that talking about the founder saw light, at his psychic moment, his moment of surrender. I didn't see light, but I swear I felt the hand of God. And I was just, at that moment, I realized that the answer wasn't going to come from within me, that it had to come from the outside. And so I was willing to accept whatever help God was going to give me and whatever people he was going to put into my life to help me at that point.
That's amazing.
Mm-hmm.
I get chills hearing that, because I can't even imagine what that was like. That's wild.
It was a moment where I knew, like, at that moment, I knew that I was going to be okay. Like, I knew that I was going to be okay. I was still scared.
Yeah.
I was still afraid. And I didn't know what any of that meant, but I knew that I was going to be okay. And that changed things. Like, that I loved the last 12 days of rehab and didn't want to come out of it,
Yeah.
And so I came out, and I was like, I describe it as, I was like an indoor cat put outside. That's what it felt like when I got out of rehab. I was scared, and I was like, it was serious. Like, I took everything very serious, but it was all in my heart then.
Yeah. Well, it's such a different perspective that you have when you walk out. Before, you said, I'm good at this, I can do this, I'm confident. Now you're walking out, I'm not confident, I need help.
Right.
Totally different perspectives.
Absolutely. Yep. You just hit the nail on the head, because that was like, I didn't have that confidence just because I didn't trust myself anymore. So I knew that whenever there was a question, like, I had to check with other people. I needed to get help from other people to check what my thinking was,
Yeah.
Yeah. So it was, and that's the thing, is because now I no longer trust that crazy mind of mine. What started happening for me is, my head would get in conflict with my heart.
Yeah.
And then I just started following my heart with anything, like if these two things are in conflict, always go with your heart.
Yeah.
And because that's where God lives, right?
Yeah,
like,
he's talking to you in there. Like it's interesting. Like I talk about having a gut check, and that's for me. Like that's how I can feel it and know like there's something off about this. And even though my head has done all the checks, I know I gotta listen to that, and that's such an amazing thing to shift inside of yourself.
Right.
And so what happens next? We're getting close to where we started right now.
Yeah. And so things started changing, and I don't know that I don't know that I can say that I turned everything over. Sure. But I started turning everything over.
Yeah.
And it's more and more, right? Like so I like to describe it as I started becoming the person that God wants me to be, right?
Yeah.
And I'm not saying I became the person, and I'm not saying that I am the person yet, but I'm becoming the person. And so that's growth. Like that's growth every day. So that's learning to turn that will over every day. And it, for me, it's gotten to the point where it's like, it's non-negotiable. Like sometimes you want to say like, well, I trust God with everything except for this. This is too important to leave up to God. And I found that you just can't do that. Like It's got to be everything. It's got to be all or none.
There's this wild thing at the very beginning of the Bible. Adam and Eve, they eat the fruit, right? And the theological principle there is that they started deciding for themselves what right and wrong was, instead of letting God decide what right and wrong is. And so that's like a shift to saying, I'm smarter, I know what's best, more than God does. And so ever since that moment of choosing for ourselves instead of knowing what God wants us to do, we've decided that we're smarter than God. And the act of going back to God and surrendering, like you're talking about, and letting Jesus lead is an act of undoing that choice that was made so long ago.
Right.
It's wild, like how picture perfect that is for you and what you've dealt with and experienced.
Right. And, it's like, it's at that point, I started to see the signs, right? There was the signs that were always there, the direction that God gives you. Yeah. But until you open your mind and you become willing to see them, you don't see them. And sometimes they're so clear that it makes a decision so easy.
Yeah.
And then it removes that toil and it removes that fear.
Yeah.
And a lot of the time it's like not making a decision.
Yeah. Oh,
right?
Sure. Totally.
Right?
Yeah. I'm just going to let it be.
Yep. And it's just so amazing, like how it works out.
Yeah. If you're not clear, I'm going to wait till I'm clear.
Yep.
Or
let
not.
it be obvious.
Yeah.
Right.
So we talked and kind of joked when we last chatted that you have kind of, because you've gone through this experience, a bit of a superpower, right? Like we talked about that and joked about it, but it's so true. Like, and as I've watched you and heard from you, it's even why you chose to take that class.
Right.
Say it again. Say the word.
So I give myself permission to suck at it until I don't suck anymore.
Yep. And that's why you went to what kind of class? What kind of
Krav Maga?
Krav Maga. I'm never gonna learn it. Okay.
Yep.
But that's amazing because I think you stopped feeling confident in your own abilities, and instead of that making you less willing to try things, it actually makes you more willing to live more free.
Absolutely. Because,
how does that work?
Well, I mean, because like if I'm completely leaving it up to God, right? Like if I'm completely leaving it there, then he's going to determine how well I'm going to do at whatever I'm doing right now, right?
Absolutely.
And so I just need to accept that he's determining how well I'm going to do at whatever it is, right?
Yeah.
Whether it's martial arts or whether it's this project at work or something I'm trying new, right?
Yeah, absolutely.
Like this, right?
Doing a podcast, man.
You know what I mean?
Yeah. And by the way, you don't suck, so good job. Way to go. But this has been amazing and such a good conversation. But it's good because you're honest. and you're willing to share about your own personal walk and your own personal journey. I mean, it's been a crazy journey for you.
Yeah, it has. And that, but I wouldn't change it for a thing. Right?
Tell me more about that for a minute.
Yeah. So, like if the reckonings wouldn't have happened, if these bad events wouldn't have happened, I would have just carried through life the way I was going. And even when things seemed like they were good, they're not as good as they are now. You know what I'm saying? Like,
yeah.
I wake up with like this indescribable joy in the morning. And I'm going to say, like, I'm going to put a disclaimer on that. That's like 90% of the days.
Good. Because you have bad days. Yeah.
Yep. And that, and who I am now is not who I was then. And, I would never want to be that person again.
Yeah.
Because there's so much, my AA sponsor says, your best days are ahead of you.
Yeah.
And, I wasn't sure that I believed that at one time because, like I'm getting along in life, I'm getting up there, and I'm like, how is that possible? How is it possible that like my best days could be ahead of me? But I totally believe it now.
Yeah.
And it's that gratitude that I have in the morning. It's just gratitude is so powerful.
It is.
And what's just as powerful is self-pity in the opposite way, right?
Yeah.
It's such a joy killer.
Yeah, it is.
But the thing that you fight self-pity with is gratitude. They can't exist in the same place. So so if you can wake up every morning with that gratitude, just thankful for what blessings God gave you the day before. And when I talk like this, it feels like it's definitely not for show. This is real for me.
Yeah, I can feel it like coming off of you. Like there's something that's so earnest in what you're saying that it's something you've wrestled with, to use our mutual thing, right? Like it's not an easy thing to get to or hold on to. And one of the things I want to make clear is when we talked, I was amazed by your story because it's so relatable to so many parts of life and so many people's lives, whether you struggle with alcoholism or something else, because there's so many things that bind people up and make it so they are not living a life that's actually, you wake up joyful, right? Like
right.
Grateful. You almost had the gift of, what did you call them? The reckonings.
Right.
That made it so you could now live free. I think so many people would be so benefited by a reckoning where they realize they're not in control.
It's the gift of desperation.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
It stinks that sometimes we have to get so desperate.
Mm-hmm.
What would you say to somebody that's really like, they're not desperate, but they're leaning that direction and they feel like life's probably just fine the way it is?
Yeah, I mean, that's the thing, and that's, I guess that's kind of the theme for me is that, I get people that say you've gotten through this, right? You're so strong, right? And I don't want to say that I dislike when I hear that, but
Sure.
It makes me very uncomfortable just because I don't believe it to be the truth, right? It's because I was so weak. It was because I was so weak that I dug myself into that hole and that hell that I was in. And it was only through, me finding God and I hate saying this too, like before, like I thought I knew God, I believed.
Yeah.
I believed in Jesus, but I didn't know how to use him. Right.
Yeah.
I didn't have a relationship. And once I had a relationship, then it was easy. Like I didn't have to be strong anymore. And it just happened.
Yeah.
And so I guess that's the message is that you don't have to be a strong person. You just have to look for the help. You just have to be willing and open and fake it until you make it, right?
Yeah. In a way, as long as it's like the person that you're not in like a faking sort of way where you're like, I'm good at this, and a faking sort of way like, I'm just gonna keep trying until I've got it.
Yep. I'm gonna keep showing up to things.
Keep showing up.
Mm-hmm.
Totally.
Yep. Mm-hmm.
Oh man, we could go on for like another hour. I feel like dissecting all of this. Unfortunately, I don't think we can keep going because of time, but here's the thing. I think this has been super powerful, and I'm really grateful for you being willing to share this. It is, I hope people hear it and they don't think to themselves, oh, that's not me. I hope people hear this and think, oh, that's me, because it is all of us. Like every one of us have something that we're holding on to as, I'm good enough because I've got this figured out, because I've got this. I'm okay because of X, Y, and Z. And in every one of those cases, it's just not true.
Right.
Like any one of those things that we use as crutches to make us feel okay about life is the thing that will eventually lead us to not living the full life that we could.
Yeah.
Because we haven't surrendered.
Mm-hmm.
Because we haven't gotten to a place of saying, I can suck until I don't suck anymore.
Right.
And I'm going to rely on Jesus to lead me there.
Anybody can do this.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Man, this is so good. And we'll have to get in the gym at some point. I told you that before. We're going to have to make it happen.
Yeah.
Do a little spar, and it'll be great.
Yeah.
Anything else you want to say or anything else you need?
I don't think so. No,
Awesome.
This has been great. This has been a lot of fun.
I'm so grateful. Thank you so much, Shawn.
Yeah.
Awesome. Thanks for listening, and we'll see you again in a couple weeks. Hey, everybody. Thanks so much for tuning in to this episode of Unscripted. What an incredible story to hear from Shawn. And it was amazing. It was touching for me when I was listening to it. It was encouraging for me. I hope it was encouraging for you. As I was chatting with Shawn afterwards, he mentioned to me that he wanted to make sure you all know that after he got out of rehab, that he actually continued to go to AA for a long time. He's actually hit 600 meetings just recently. It's incredible. But he just wants you to know that that's a huge thing he encourages people to be part of, because it's been so helpful to him. With that, thanks for tuning in, and I hope to see you next time on Unscripted. Have a great week.